You're listening to WorkWire, sponsored by Career Club and SHRM. Career Club has a range of services aimed at job seekers with an empathetic approach. Whether you are a job seeker yourself, know someone who is in job search, or an HR professional looking to bring a more empathetic approach to transitioning employees, check out career.club. If you are an HR professional seeking to enhance your skills, subscribe to SHRM and explore their extensive resources. Visit shrm.org. That's shrm.org.
Hey everybody, this is Bob Goodwin, President of Career Club, and my good friend Johnny C. Taylor Jr., President and CEO of SHRM. Welcome to another episode of The WorkWire. Johnny, welcome. How are you?
Man, it's so good to see you, Bob. It's been a long week, but good to see you.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. No, it's always good to see you, and I get energized when we do these. The feedback that we get from listeners is phenomenal, and it's just fun doing this with you, so thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, we're going to take a little bit of a different format today in that usually we tackle a topic. Today we're going to look at two topics.
Come on.
And again, both kind of being pulled from recent news. The first one is around immigration.
Yes.
And so recently the Biden administration provided, I want to say 480,000 work visas to newly arriving Venezuelan immigrants who are just here, not just here, but seeking asylum. And so they haven't gone through the whole process. They just got here and they're being provided work visas. Before we jump in that, I just want to read a little bit about what's going on in Venezuela and what's driving this. So we all know Nicolas Maduro is a dictator down there and has not done a great job with this country. Listen to this. This is amazing. Since 2015, more than 7 million Venezuelans have left the country due to ongoing economic and political turmoil. According to the United Nations Refugee Agency, the Venezuelan exodus represents a quarter of their population has bugged out in the last 8 years. Typically, they've been staying in the region, but more recently, starting last year, an increasing number have traveled to the U.S. to seek asylum. As of fiscal year 2022, U.S. authorities encountered about 200,000 Venezuelans at the border, a 73% increase just year over year. And now when we see the administration saying, hey, come on down and we'll immediately let you start working here, why wouldn't they leave?
Right. Well, that's the issue. And I want to make sure that those listening understand what we're going to talk about. This isn't a political matter for me. I mean, it's just not. There are a ton of factors that go into how countries decide who's going to come and who's not going to come. It's very personal to me. I can tell you, I grew up in South Florida. I went to school in Miami at the University of Miami. As you know, I started my practice when we were allowing Cubans to stay in the United States. Yeah. We were repatriating Haitians at literally the same time. And so where I'm going to go with that is it creates real tensions when one group is effectively given priority treatment over another group.
Yep.
And so let me start with how, we have enough tension in our country right now. But it's right. If I'm sitting in Africa trying to get to the US right now, and I've been told no, and in fact, Haiti, and we were repatriating, flying planes, sending people back to the countries that they come from, but you're going to accept people from another part of the world and not just accept them and take them through your normal process, but actually get in front of it and say, oh, and I'm going to allow you to go to work right away. It's like, what is going on here?
Can you explain what a work visa is real quick, Johnny?
Yeah, the question that we always ask on, if you've ever gone through the application process, is, are you eligible to work in the United States? We don't ask, are you a U.S. citizen? Because that would lead to illegal discrimination based upon ethnicity. So it's essentially, can you work in this country? Are you authorized to work? The work visa actually gives that individual the ability to come into our country and he or she is allowed to immediately pursue work. So you have sort of this difference. You have some immigrants who enter the country, whether legally or illegally, they enter the country, and some of them have to go under, to work off the grid, if you will,
Yeah.
to do what they do. And they're not paying into Social Security, et cetera. There's big risk. Oftentimes they're used and abused by employers because they know that person is not here on the record, and so they can pay them less,
Yeah.
et cetera. Then there are people who come here through any sorts. They have J-1 visas. They have, all sorts of visas, work visas, where you're allowed to come. And let me tell you about the visas. There are some short term, which means you come in. I was in the theme park business for a while when I was at Paramount Pictures. We owned theme parks. Disney they will bring people in for a finite period of time to work at Disney, Epcot, et cetera. The agricultural business relies oftentimes on people coming in. The visa, in short, is we are allowing you to come for some specified period of time, typically to do a certain type of work where the industry does not have enough workers. This one was generally and very, very different. When I say this one, the current one, it's targeted at a country and seems to be a broad work visa, which is really creating its own issues. I'm trying to understand myself why we did it. There are dictators all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's not limited to Venezuela. So if you say Venezuela, then what happens if, the person in North Korea decides, what if somehow we got a flood of people who said, I want to come out of there? That's a dictator. Can we as a country make the commitment that we're going to allow people from parts of the world that are run by dictators to come into the United States and not just come here for asylum, but come here with an immediate work visa? That's a fair question.
Yeah. I want to go back to, and thank you for going back to this is not a political thing.
No.
I certainly don't want to discuss it in that context, but America was built on the back of immigrants.
Yes.
I mean, that's just a fact.
That's right.
And one that is, I think, by and large, served us extremely well, right? And has brought great diversity. It's part of what makes the fabric of America what it is. And so, sometimes there's this mentality of shutting the door behind you.
Right.
It's like, that was good for me, and I'm glad I'm in, but now can we shut and lock the door because I don't want the next person, the next country, the next whatever, having access to what I've got. And there's sort of this finite mentality. But the reality is we've got, you're our SHRM guy, 10 million job openings, whatever it currently is.
0.8 now, but yeah, a lot of them.
Just a lot of them. And certainly, a multiple of the job seekers. So there's a need for labor right now.
And so you're spot on. At SHRM, I can tell you, we focus on this not as a humanitarian or a moral argument about should people be allowed to flee countries for persecution of what. That's not where we go. That's an appropriate argument. It's just not what we focus on. We focus on just that, the country's needs. 8.8 million workers. We have, 4 million, maybe 5 million Americans looking for jobs. So there's this disconnect. But here's the rub then. What happens if you allow 500,000 people to enter the country? And I'm using Venezuela only because this is what we're talking about. It could be any country. Right. Yes, you bring them in. Let's say they all want to live in the already crowded urban cities where we don't have the services to provide them. What happens if maybe we need 100,000 of those people to be in Des Moines, Iowa? But if that's the struggle with allowing people to come into a country and letting them settle where they want to settle. You still may not solve for the 8.8 million open jobs if either the people don't have the skills that we need for those jobs, because a big chunk of those jobs go unfilled because people don't have the skills to do them. So letting 400,000 people in doesn't drop that 8.8 to 8.4 necessarily. And then if those jobs are in places, the flyover countries, states, as we call them, where Iowa, I just left Boise, Idaho with the SHRM chapter there. I was in Wisconsin, Sheboygan, Wisconsin this week. They have ultra low unemployment. And I can assure you that many of these people are not willing to go to those parts of our country. So it may not, I hear the argument that we have a shortage of people, talent, and so why don't we just allow more people to come? We don't control where people live once they come into our country. And we sure as heck don't control if they have the specific skills that we need. And are they willing to do those jobs?
So just mechanically, how do you understand? Because I don't, how people would actually get their hands on this documentation. And then it seems like, to your point, this brokering system of matching supply and demand.
Yes.
Does any of that mechanism exist?
Not generally. And it has everything to do with we're a wonderful country that allows people a ton of rights, right? And that's what these people, many of them are fleeing their countries precisely because of the way that America operates. So we don't have a situation where we say, we're going to give you a visa, but you've got to live in one of these 3 states, period. We don't do that. You are welcome to come to the United States of America and you can move as you will. So it would be interesting if we could design a system that would actually help us address what the nation's employers are begging for, which is enough of the right people in the right places with the right skills. If that could be tied to an opening of the door so that we could get the talent where we need it, this would be a win-win. It'd be great for the people who are fleeing horrific conditions. And at the same time, it would be good for us. But if everyone ends up in an overcrowded LA, Miami, New York, DC,
Chicago, Philadelphia,
well, this could actually not work out for anyone then. And that's what concerns me. Again, this is not political. I'm not even into the moral and humanitarian arguments. It's very much for us at SHRM. We need immigration. You're right. Our country was built on it. We need to supplement. And you and I have talked a lot about our ultra low birth rates.
Yep.
So we have a replenishment problem. I don't think we have the luxury of saying, no, we don't want people to come into our country. We need them. The struggle is, how do we get the right people to go to the right places to do the jobs that we need them to do? And that's a much more complicated sort of math that has to occur. And it means our policy has to be driven toward that end, not just opening. To your point, there's 8 billion people on the planet. There are a whole bunch of people who want to come to the United States of America. Just because you want to come, just because you actually are, persecuted in your home and you're fleeing, potential murder, all of that stuff is true, but we couldn't house 7 billion people if we couldn't house an additional billion people if they wanted, right? This is just the reality.
So one of the things that I always enjoy talking with you about is unintended consequences. So for whatever reason, political or otherwise, this particular country, these particular folks were giving preferential treatment.
They cut the line.
They did cut the line. And so the line was cut for them.
That's right.
The line was cut for them. What's the potential ripple effect of this? So like if we were negotiating with another country,
right,
and that country said, hey, this is all good. We'll do what you guys want with putting a military base in our country. But what we need you to do is take 500,000 people for us because we ain't got work for them and you guys do. And so all of a sudden that becomes a trading token that's used in a negotiation. Something happened here. I don't know what it is. And maybe you do. But what are some of the unintended consequences of a move like this that we should be thinking about?
Well, there are at least 3. One is that we bring people, and I alluded to this in the fact, they come to our country and they come into overcrowded parts of the world anyway, and we just can't accommodate them. So I have a work visa, but there is no job because the jobs are somewhere else. So you could have this a problem. Number 2 is that we could begin to create an environment where people, I use that term because I've heard the term, they skip the line. And then you create real tension. If you've ever been, just think about standing in a retail line and someone gets in front of you or waiting in line to get on an airplane.
Amen. That's what I was thinking about. Like, I know that one.
Airplane, you are pissed. And that adds to the toxicity. And you and I talk about how angry people are in societies right now. No one likes to feel that they were treated unfairly.
Yes.
And so if I have a family member who's gone through the process, is waiting for their green card and they're work visa, and someone comes in front of them, 500,000 of those someone, which means that what was a 7-year wait now may become a 9-year wait for me. Like, these are problems that will further degrade civility and people's sense of fairness in our country. So I think that is an unintended consequence. Again, I'm not suggesting that that's a reason not to do what we did, because frankly, I don't know why the president did what he did. I respect that he took all of the factors at play and said, this is why we need to do that. And I have to trust that the president of the United States used good judgment in that regard. So I want to make clear, this is not a political thing. People, they'll jump all over it and say, it is not. I'm just saying, none of us want to play Monday morning quarterback. The unintended consequences are exactly what you're talking about. And it's something that we need to be very, very thoughtful about. Those are the two, is this general impact on our culture, big culture, our society in America, when people feel like that just wasn't fair. And then this idea that, okay, so they come and they end up in all the wrong places and don't solve for the problems that we have.
Yep. Okay. All good. And then I just, thank you for what you said. Like, let's assume good intent.
Yes.
On the part of policymakers, because we don't know. So we can speculate and not advance the conversation at all. But at the same time, being cognizant of the fact that, this particular group was given preferential treatment, allowed to skip the line. And we really need to make sure that, when either as employers or policymakers, we're taking into account the totality of a decision like this.
That's right.
Yeah. So I promised that we would do two topics. That was immigration and one that I am very confident we'll come back to. The second one is something that you had brought to me very recently, which was talking about Gen Z, who is in the news all the time, and broadly defining them as 16 to 24-year-olds, something in that basic line. But the article was about why there's such a pain in the butt to manage.
That's right.
And part of your comment to me was, are they really? Is this truly a generational thing that they will uniquely be etched like this forever? Or are they like every other young generation coming into the workforce, and they will continue to evolve as they mature themselves? So what do you think?
Yeah, so I at first thought, all of us, there was the commercial about, I'm now starting to sound like my mother.
Yeah.
Like, there is a natural process where every new generation has all of the answers, and everything the older generations did was wrong, and and then you become them, and they're like, okay, so I got the cycle. I would have said that to you before, save for three factors that I think are unique. I think this particular generation will be truly different than prior generations. And I think there are three intervening factors. Number one is the pandemic. They experienced something that hasn't occurred at scale since 1918, right? Mm-hmm. They saw something that, just how that works on the mindset of someone who was either getting ready to graduate high school and therefore didn't have a high school graduation, or didn't go to prom, or who took the SAT under some very different circumstances than they had done. It's a totally different world for them.
Yeah.
And so I think that's number one. And I don't think we can underscore how significantly impacted people will be, that generation, having lived through a pandemic. And it's on the front end as well as the post-pandemic world. They experienced change that normally took 20 or 30 years, and it occurred overnight. So that's the second. Is they're digital natives.
Yep.
They are, and that's something. A large percentage of the millennial population were also digital natives, but kind of 1.0. Like, compared to what we're seeing now, AI, that's a whole different ball game. And they're seeing things. I was at a hotel, checking into a hotel the other day, and the entire experience was people-less.
Oh, wow.
I've never seen anything like it. And this was a high-end hotel, including when I parked my car in the garage, there was a little rover going through the parking lot. It was the security guard. It was a machine. It was a machine. And so I'm like, what in the world? It came up. It took a picture of my car tag. It was just all unreal. They have because of the digitization and the personalization of the world now, they're going to experience life in a way and see life in a way that you and I actually on our best day can't conceive of. Those two things, I said three, but those are the two things. And I remember the third one. They are going to see a level of political strife that we haven't ever seen. I mean, let's just face it. We have gone through times and, there's always Democrats, red versus blue or whatever. But this election that they're experiencing, the last one, and
for sure,
we've never gone to sleep at night and awakened to a president that no one thought was going to be the president. Like it just has never, we've not seen that, right? And then that happened, and then we had a split, and now you got two, are they octogenarians, right?
Yep.
But
Almost.
It's weird. The whole thing is weird. So they've come in with an environment. I jokingly said this with a group of people. I said, when we grew up, our diversity issues were race, some gender, but race, a little religion, but that was it, the civil rights categories. Now it's political toxicity, and everything is political, everything. So you take those three sort of realities, macro realities, and you say they're digital natives in a way that we haven't. Their experience with technology is very different. One, they grew up in a pandemic. None of us can relate to that. And then this new political environment where everything is politics, everything. And there's a study that I saw, CBS News, ABC News, one of them, half of America's college sophomores have said they would not room with someone who is of a different political affiliation. One half.
Wow.
And remember, our generation, you didn't actually get to choose anyway, right? You showed up and they said, this is your roommate. And that was the point. They try to match people a little bit based upon some preferences, but at the end of the day, no one would think to ask, what is your political affiliation? And we use that when we decide for whom, with whom.
Yeah, I want to make a couple points, Johnny, because your three things completely agree. I would submit there's a fourth one, which is because if this is 2023 and the Great Recession was 2008, that's 15 years ago. Yeah. So there were a lot of people, because this is one of the main things for Gen Z is security.
Yeah.
Because they saw their parents also be underwater on their house, lose their job. And it's like, I mean, that is a lot of uncertainty. And whatever the old social contract was, looks like it doesn't work.
Right.
So there's a lot of skepticism about the system because the system didn't work for my parents.
That's right.
And potentially created a lot of, just uncertainty and anxiety.
And I'm going to do worse than my parents. This is the first generation. That's right. So if it didn't work for them and I'm going to do worse than them, OMG.
Yeah. And then I want to marry a couple of ideas just back on this sort of digital native piece with the, kind of what you're saying, like with political differences is, you're at the very, very front of the line of, I'm going to call it IED, DEI, as people would colloquially know it. That's the opposite of that. And I believe because of social media, algorithms, and what would commonly be thought of as like an echo chamber. Yep. I only listen to points of view that sound like mine and just reinforce them. And like many things that are acquired tastes, that I start off wanting something that's mildly spicy. Well, that doesn't satisfy anymore. I need something that's spicier than that. And I got to keep dialing it up, right, to really get me excited again. Mm-hmm. And so the same thing happens with the rhetoric. And to your point about it getting angrier and, just more polemic, that it's like, well, this all kind of works together. These aren't actually disparate things. These are contributing forces that lead to this, which gets to, maybe kind of taking this to the next step. This is the most stressed out generation that we've ever seen. Some of the numbers that we were looking at from Ernst & Young is, this is a very anxious, freaked out generation. And it's the first generation that is demanding from employers mental health benefits and financial education benefits. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Well, it's real easy. Mental health, I think, is a direct outcome of what we know social media has done. There's some benefits to social media and everything else, but you live in this world and you think everyone else's life is perfect and yours isn't. And therefore, over time, that has a really negative impact on your self-esteem and overall wellness. So we know that. The second area, though, when we talk about financial literacy, is you pointed it out, in a matter of 2 years, interest rates doubled. In a matter of 2 years, fuel price. I mean, we have seen student loan debt is now, $2 trillion or something that none of us could have considered. I talked to a parent the other day who told me his kid's going to a private high-end school for college, $90,000 a year, 90. These are insane sets of financial pressures in the aggregate that will induce pressure. We know that a lot of divorces occur because of financial stress. And so these kids aren't getting married because they don't think they can afford to be married. So forget the divorce. Yeah. So yes, those are the two things that are playing them out. And the real issue here is, Bob, it all shows up in the workplace. That's what happens. They come in, they're stressed, right, from the beginning. So mental health, incidences of mental health crises are on the rise. Suicide ideation at a minimal is showing up. You have all of this stuff happening, alcoholism, other substance abuse problems. So that shows up. Then it affects productivity, because obviously if you are not bringing your full self to work from a productivity standpoint, then you can't be fully productive. And then that plays out, and then you're taking days off because you're sick, physically or mentally. So the vicious cycle. The biggest challenge, though, is what it's doing to people managers. Because in times past, a people manager could simply bring an employee in your job was to develop them to do their jobs better. Now you've got to be a social worker, you've got to be a nurse, a doctor, you've got to do a whole bunch of
parent,
right? A parent, and that's how it's playing out in the workforce. Is these children who are compromised are now coming to work, and we have to fill the gaps in because they are the next generation of workers.
I want to make a point, Johnny, which is, it's very easy, and I've probably been guilty of this, to criticize.
Oh, yeah.
But we laid out at least 4 factors that say, this is actually kind of a different species than maybe what we grew up in. And it's not just, hey, grow up. It's not all your fault. It's like, this is the world that they were born into and have been shaped by. Yep. We were talking about social media a minute ago. This is also bringing your whole self to work. This is a generation that's grown up on sharing.
Totally.
Like, they talk about money. They talk about religion. They talk about politics. All the stuff you're not supposed to talk about. They're like, why? I did one of the statistics from this E&Y study was 91% believe being authentic is important, that they want the employer to be authentic. And this is why they want to work for purpose-driven, mission-driven organizations. There's some authenticity, but they believe that it's their responsibility to be authentic, to share. There's no shame in any of this. And yet, so then they're looking for help.
You see me shaking my head. The help part we can help with, but we should start with, I hate the word, bring your authentic self to work. I remind people all the time, you don't want my authentic self. You don't want the person. Trust me. We've taken it. What happens is, I understand the spirit of it. The problem is this generation took it literally, because that is what they do. And so here we are. When my mother said, someone invited me in their house growing up and they said, oh, feel free to help yourself. I understood that they didn't really mean that. I could go eat on and eat all of their favorite foods. They don't have that kind of limiting sort of way to see the world. Well, you said it. You said I could bring my authentic self to work, show up as I am. So then they dress how they want. I mean, you've seen the big debate about, whether or not politicians need to have a dress code in Congress. Like, where is all of this? Right? But we have to be cautious, because we now have a new generation And it's influencing the older generations. That was the point about what's showing up on Capitol Hill. When you tell people, be your authentic self in your life, at your work, at your church, at your kid's school, think about the consequences of that. And then when they get there and the system, the culture says, then you create this tension, which manifests itself in more mental health challenges. And it's our fault. Like, we didn't tell people, no, there's a Johnny that shows up to his kid's school. There's a different one who shows up to church. There's a different one that shows up at work. And I dress differently for each one of those. Like, this is the way the real world works. And we haven't developed a generation. So I think I'm optimistic about the generation. But what I tell you, and this is why I alluded to people managers, we have got to train people managers to help adjust them back to a more normalized environment. Just because your mother said you can do whatever you want, write on the walls if you want. No, you can't write on my walls in my office space because you have an idea and it came to you. It doesn't work that way here.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. So what are some really we practical ways that we can train frontline people managers to better help this generation? I think I might guess one or two of them: empathy, listening.
Yep.
But go ahead.
Those are the two. You took the words out of my mouth. Extreme listening. You know, I'm going to get to that because it's necessary to be empathetic. But it's empathy. Now, empathy not to be confused with sympathy. So if you see I'm saying, look at what a Generation Z person is doing on the work, from a workforce and performance standpoint, and understand everything that you and I have just described for the last 10, 12 minutes, right? Got it. This is their reality. That doesn't mean you accept it and say, therefore, the organization is going to change for that. It is approach them, guide them toward a better place, but with empathy. And then it does require extreme listening. It's the only way you can be a successful empath.
Yeah. So when you're meeting with senior HR leaders or even CEOs, do you find that kind of counsel resonates, or is it, no, they just need to grow up? This is BS. Like, come on.
It's the latter. There is no sympathy. And it's largely because most executives are in their 40s, 50s, and now older. And so we don't understand that. We just don't understand it. You grew up in a system that said this is the way you are to behave if you want to be in that corner suite. This generation doesn't understand that. And so there's a disconnect. So you nailed it. People manager, and not just frontline people manager, all the way up to the executive office. A lot of my talking when I go out and do speeches for major companies, I just left one and I said, I got to tell your C-suite, this is what is coming into your workforce.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not suggesting that you have to roll over, but I'm saying knowing it means you've got to prepare your people managers, and your very own approach to leadership must now shift to respond to a very different group of entrants.
And we've talked about this before, where just the preparedness for the workforce is not what it used to be. And again, because of a very singular event, the pandemic, that really got in the way of some social skills that you would take for granted, having been developed in a physical world that all of a sudden didn't exist. People call Gen Z Zoomers, which I think is a great term, but that's part of it. It's like they just didn't get that part of the life experience. And so you can, as a manager or an executive, you can rage against the machine. It doesn't change the reality. And in understanding the underlying causes, taking the time to listen, and then, getting great resources like Sherman from other thought leaders. It's like, but what can we do on a very practical, implementable level? Because it will serve as a point of differentiation as an employer of choice.
That's right.
Because back to social and sharing, they're going to say, I love my company.
Yep. Or I hate it.
Or I hate my company.
And they don't have any problem doing that. That's right. No, I think that's why I started and ended with empathy. I talked about listening. Listening is a part of empathy. But at the end of the day, I just left Sheboygan, Wisconsin, talking with a group called Sharon S. Well, it's sponsored by Sharon S. I'm going to forget that, Richardson Hospice Foundation. Surprisingly, they invited me out and they brought business leaders from the area, that part just north of I think it's north of Milwaukee, within an hour of Milwaukee. And I kind of talked about this concept of empathy. If we don't figure this out, we're going to have them over here and us over there, and it's just going to be a battle. And we've got to figure out how to train managers up through and into the executive office to know and understand the Zoomer population. I like that. I'm going to actually use that because it truly does describe how they have experienced and see the world.
Exactly. Well, Johnny, I want to be mindful of your time and listeners and viewers' time. Again, I know we will come back to this in the future. Yeah. Thank you for kind of bringing us back to empathy and extreme listening. Those will be and are the superpowers for leaders in the 21st century, particularly dealing with a new generation that comes from a different starting point. So, but as always, great to see you. Thanks so much for sharing. And everyone who's taken the time to look at this on YouTube, would love for you to subscribe, comment, like. And for people that are watching this or listening to this on your favorite podcast platform, please rate and review. It helps. So with that, Johnny, thank you so much.
Be well. Take care.
Okay. Talk to everyone soon. Bye-bye.
Check out career.club for personalized help with your job search. Visit shrm.org to become part of the largest human resources organization worldwide.